Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 36, the podcast about our lives and the love of pop culture. I am your host, VyseTheBold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And OldManStompy.
Whoa!
Back again, we fire Pyro.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guessed it. He's double fired now. From now on, we should just call him Pyro, even though we already kind of do.
So actually, this is OldManStompy's first forte as a regular cast member. You won't be on every week, but you are a regular cast member rather than a guest. So how's it feel?
It feels about the same as always. It feels like
You've been promoted. Don't you feel the shiny gleam?
I feel like I spent 6 weeks as a desk anchor up in Utica, and now I'm here with you amateurs. So I'll explain if you haven't seen this already, Vyse. I'll explain this later during my segments.
Please.
So I guess I'll jump right into where Dan usually goes. So that was a segment from a YouTube video that the WWF put out last week. They claimed that they found from their tape library a tape from a 1987 build for a promotion for a regional territory called Southpaw Regional Wrestling.
This is fantastic.
It's amazing. It's actually just a really elaborate 20-minute long advertisement for KFC.
Yeah.
But it features like all the main stars. Like the main anchor of the announce team is played by John Cena. Mm-hmm. He plays Lance Catamaran, who's this like disillusioned news anchor who spent 6 weeks, 36 days, really emphasizes that.
He actually went into a lot of trouble to come up with like mannerisms for like the new character and everything.
Yeah. So I will say that I've been told that the characters they play on this show are like characters they play backstage in skits. Nice. And the characters, so Tex Ferguson and Chad Too Bad, who are like this former tag team, these like Deep South guys who are now like fighting a grudge match over a woman they both like, who is also the ex-wife of the other anchor, apparently.
Wow.
Like those characters are based off of, so they're played by Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, who are the current Raw Tag Team Champions, and they have a podcast. You know, just like us normal people.
Oh.
And they play those characters related to that podcast. And supposedly, like, those characters have really taken off. Like, they play them backstage to, like, lighten up the mood. Because wrestling's a pretty tense and carny business. And they basically turned it into this, like, promotional sketch. So I don't want to spoil, like, the build, but I recommend that everybody... go check it out and go buy some KFC Georgia Gold to support the funding of further episodes. The whole joke is that they're building up for a pay-per-view event, a closed-circuit pay-per-view event called Lethal Leap Year, which takes place on February 29th, 1987, which kind of spoils the ending of the whole...
Yeah, it's not a leap year.
Yeah, that's really funny. Now, what really reminded me of this... this whole thing was it felt a lot like that TNA like that TNA short that you showed me with the brothers with the Hardy brothers.
Yeah, I actually rewatched that a couple days ago because the Southpaw thing just kind of reminded me of that stupid like table slam where the top of the table just flips over.
So that has become like an entire universe unto itself. Like, the Hardy Boys playing those characters, Broken Matt Hardy and his brother Nero, like, is one of the emergent phenomenons of the last year of professional wrestling. Like, they actually quit TNA because TNA got bought out by Anthem Media, and they wouldn't let them retain creative control of their characters.
Oh, come on.
So they went to Ring of Honor, and they immediately challenged for the tag team titles there, and they immediately won them. They're the hottest thing outside of WWF right now. Oh, like, wow. That is an entire canon unto itself. They have this thing called, like, the Lake of Reincarnation, where you, like, throw wrestlers in, and they come out as, like, previous incarnations of their characters.
That's amazing.
And,
so,
like, what's funny to me...
come out as, like, Cactus Jack.
Well, he did that anyway because he had multiple personality disorder, but, like, that was part of it. He was in a Royal Rumble 4 times. He was in his Mick Foley, he was in his Cactus Jack, he was in his Mankind,
That's great.
He was in his other character, Dude Love. Like, he did that all in the same wrestling match.
That's so
He just
good.
kept coming out. But yeah, so like the whole thing behind Matt Hardy was that like he went insane after losing a match to his brother, and he acted like he came up with this character called Broken Matt Hardy, who referred to everybody by their middle names, and he acted like an evil genius who sat there and played the piano and thought up schemes, and he had his gardener prepare the like battlegrounds for massacre.
That was like my
The
favorite.
gardener, by the way, was
Walks
played
back
by
to
his
the-
father-in-law. Yeah,
I just saw that he walks back to the bar and the gardener's just chilling there, like everything looked good. Yes, it's like the one time
Yes.
he like clearly breaks characters. Like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, then he just keeps walking.
So, and it was surprisingly deep because, like, in his head he was an evil genius, but the audience knows that he's just an idiot who lost a match and is acting like an evil genius, and other people around him, like his wife and his son and his father-in-law, are just trying to support him until he gets over it. But it winds up, like, enfolding the entire, like, family, and it becomes the centerpiece of the TNA, like, tag team division. They had an entire 30-minute special, I think, a whole episode of TNA programming where they invited what they called tag teams throughout time and space, which is really a bunch of like nostalgia acts plus whoever they could find who wasn't currently under contract with WWF, all coming to the compound to be thrown into the Lake of Immortality. Or reincarnation. Sorry, I haven't watched all the sketches, but I highly recommend going through the YouTube channel and watching them. They're equally schmaltzy, and the character work is just spot on.
It just seems like WWE with this Southpaw thing is trying to embrace this kind of kitschy humor. It seems like to me.
Yes.
Like they always had their like immature sort of humor. They even have like fart jokes every once in a while in their in between skits and stuff like that. It's just like, man, like we're way past fart jokes. Like. Like, we need something a little bit a little more clever than that.
I mean, this is definitely intended for sort of hardcore fans who remember what it was like or have an idea of what it was like to watch territorial wrestling back in the 80s.
Yeah.
The fact that Ric Flair, the actual Ric Flair, is playing a Ric Flair impersonator, claiming not to be Ric Flair, is like... is like beyond meta to me. I don't know how to handle it. The fact that he's like, if I was ever at Southpaw Regional Wrestling, which I wouldn't be because they can't afford me, then I would.
Yeah, well, one of his.
And by the way, I'm definitely not Ric Flair.
Yeah, that was the thing. One of his KFC sends. Seriously, I'm not Ric Flair. It's like, what?
Anyway, so I enjoyed that. I encourage everybody to go watch it. And go watch the Hardy Boys because they're still out there, and there's a decent chance they have not accepted bookings past May for the indie scene. So there's a decent chance that once WrestleMania season ends in April, they'll be back in the WWF to sort of bring their career full circle. Like Jeff Hardy, he's only 39, and he debuted as a jobber against Razor Ramon.
Jeez,
who was a famous wrestler from the 80s.
So long ago, and he's not that old.
It is, and I'll talk about this because I know WrestleMania is on a recon topic, so I'll go on a little bit more about this later. But like, we're running out of Attitude Era stars who are still in wrestling shape, and a lot of the time those guys are used. The WWF really leans on those guys to sell special events, like their main pay-per-views, and so we should try to enjoy that while we can, while these guys are still sort of able to compete at this level.
Jeez, how old is The Rock at this point? I mean, he has to be in his late 30s.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, John Cena is also in his late 30s. Like, he's not an Attitude Era star, but he's the first major main eventer to still be around from the first era after. I think, so Jericho is still wrestling. He's an Attitude Era star. And The Big Show is still wrestling. They're both, I think, 45 or 46. And I think they're the last two guys, them plus AJ Styles, who was never really with the WWF, but he just joined this last year. I think is 39. And they're, I think, the last three guys, the WWF, who had any significant amount of time with WCW.
Okay.
Which folded back in 2001 and was the only real television competition with the WWF on the national level basically ever in America.
Sure.
You know what would be great is if when the Big Show finally gets his send off, his retirement match or whatever, I hope they contrive a way to seal him back up in the Dungeon of Doom.
That would really be That would really pull things full circle. I have never heard him make any reference to his time as a member of the Dungeon of Doom. Because of Hulk Hogan's scandal with his like sex tape and the whole Gawker suit, they don't really talk very much about that part of WCW history at all.
Well, maybe like allude to it like with like a weird sarcophagus and a mage that's totally not from the Dungeon of Doom.
They do like making these sort of offhand references to like things that happened 10 years ago that only really hardcore fans who are in their 50s or 30s but nerdy like us would ever get.
How long do you think it's going to take before Hulk Hogan is exonerated, or at least like people forget about it enough?
So someone asked this question to Dave Meltzer, the journalist I talked to you about, who's like the only legitimate professional wrestling journalist. And he said sooner rather than later, and sooner than is probably appropriate.
Okay.
Enough.
So I'll leave you to fill in the blanks as to what appropriate is, knowing that the WWF is a carny business and has basically no definition of the word appropriate.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, 5 years sounds like long enough, but it's probably going to be a much shorter than that.
Yep.
It's already been a year, right?
I think so. So Hogan, let's see. He showed up for, I think, his 61st birthday party, and I believe that was last year. After that, I don't really recall.
I remember he was planned as DLC for I think the 2016 WWE game, and he got out there for I think like a week before it happened, something like that.
That makes sense to me. If it's 2K16, you said?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
So yeah, that came out the end of 2015, so it's a little over a year. All right, that timeline makes sense. I mean, he hasn't been on television, so I have no like frame of reference to remember what the last. Like, they don't use him a lot. They pull him out at WrestleMania and once in a while because they do what's called an old school Raw or like a nostalgia Raw, like usually around January or February, and they tend to roll out all their like all the old stars who can't really wrestle anymore, but are extremely recognizable.
Well, I don't mean just for wrestling, because like he's there even just for personality's sake. He's there for commentary, and he's there for as a face of the company.
Right.
So it's such a shame that he's terrible in his personal life. But
well, I mean, that was true even before the Gawker suits.
Well, yeah. He's long had. The stuff with his son has been incredibly tragic and very monstrous, in fact, and just like the way that it's been handled.
Yeah, but I mean, even before that, the interplay between him and Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth and like his wife and some of his friends, Bubba the Love Sponge and his wife, like it goes back pretty far.
Yeah, well, the whole thing was about Bubba the Love Sponge, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, that was the tape back in the the one that got released to Gawker. But I mean, that's a story that goes back like decades.
Well, isn't that guy a piece of trash too? Like they're all like bad. Like,
yeah.
Just straight up, yeah. Oh, okay.
like I can think of a few examples of guys like Goldberg, who's notorious for being like genuinely a good person, and Dusty Rhodes, who passed away a couple of years ago, who was supposed to be a saint backstage. Like, but those stories are the exception and not the rule.
Yeah,
I've heard of all things. One person who's apparently I don't know about backstage, but at least the fans, a good guy was. Damn it, you would know this. I forgot the guy's real name, but the $1 Million Man.
Oh, Ted DiBiase?
Yes.
He's supposed to be a nice guy, and he just started a ministry a couple of years ago. He did an AMA on Reddit about that.
Nice.
That seems to go hand in hand, like being a wrestler and also a preacher. They should have used that gimmick, actually.
They did. There was a preacher gimmick by a guy by the name of Mordecai. He was supposed to be the foil for the Undertaker a while ago.
That's great.
Sometime in the early 21st century, which made sense. Like, this is when the Undertaker was in his full like corporate ministry, face of evil, like role. So I guess it would have been perfect, but the guy wasn't that good. It never really took off. They spent a lot of time promoting his character. They had these great vignettes that really fit in with the Attitude Era, where he was like standing in a field of crosses and things like that. Like they really went all in on building him, but he never really panned out as a Yeah.
As much as I'd like to keep talking about this facet of wrestling, we should definitely move on to talking about some video games here. So
Yeah,
move
okay.
along.
So, I'll go pretty quick through the other things I have listed for the week. So, I have been slowly playing through Trails of Cold Steel,
Nice.
which is the Legend of Heroes Falcom game. I think Legend of Heroes 9, I want to say, the first chapter.
Who the hell knows?
I think it's 9, but, 8 never came out in America. It was too, Exceed is overburdened translating the games they can manage to bring out here.
Yeah.
So, they skipped from 7 to 9.
Those are really sequels to 7, though, so that's why. So if anybody who doesn't know, the what is it, the Dragon Slayer series, isn't that what the overarching series is called?
Those are the first 2 games, right? And then everything after that is the Legend of Heroes brand.
So yeah, the Legend of Heroes is part of the larger Dragon Slayer series, and none of them are related, except in theme and tropes, and but they're not story related until you get to Trails in the Sky, and then the Trails in the Sky trilogy is related to the 2 games after. I think it's Ai no Kiseki. Is that it?
Ao no Kiseki.
Ao no Kiseki and Zero no Kiseki, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the 2 that we're missing.
Yeah, they're the Crossbell duology, I think it's called, in universe.
Okay. Yeah, so those are directly related to the Trails in the Sky trilogy. I'm not sure of the connection between Trails of Cold Steel, though.
So what I've been told is that I think it's Trails of Cold Steel 2, there's an intermezzo chapter where they do nothing but name drop things that happened in Legend of Heroes 7 and 8, and it's just a nightmare for translators because it makes absolutely no sense.
That sucks.
It's generations in the Bible.
Half of these games never came out in America. One of them was being translated in parallel with Trails of Cold Steel by some guy who was practically driven to suicide by the effort, so he was probably not particularly reachable at the time.
Yeah, sure. I definitely recommend that story on Kotaku about the translation of the second Trails in the Sky game. It is an incredible story. It's just wow. How did they even get through it?
Yeah, I don't mean to say that it's negative to me that these games aren't out in America yet. It's a tremendous burden. The storylines and the dialogue in these games are intricate. And I remember in Trails of the Sky, every treasure chest that you open also has unique dialogue if you check it after you've already gotten the treasure.
Yeah.
That's every single chest in the game. There are characters that you might never talk to that have an entire life story they will tell you if you bother to talk to them.
Yeah, that's the big gimmick I heard about Trails of the Sky, is that all the NPCs are real people with lives.
Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of effort to bring these games out, and I appreciate them when they came out. I didn't necessarily want to commit to playing them because they take 40 hours apiece, but Pyro bought Trails of Cold Steel for me when we did our Secret Santa in early January at MagFest. So I feel like that should be the next JRPG I beat. So I've been playing through it about a half an hour at a time, and one day I'll finally beat it.
You'll hack your way through it.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
I mean, I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's a little sterile. It's just a JRPG. It doesn't really subvert any of the tropes in a way that I would consider to be remarkable.
Sure.
It's just fun. I mean, the Trails games, they seem to. I don't know if the Crossbell duology has this, but the Trails games I've played so far, they have a side quest log, because you're supposed to be a hunter who takes on guild missions, and that's part of how the entire story is structured.
I love that
so
kind of gameplay.
it makes me a little anxious, I'm supposed to be completing all the quests and getting all the AP that I can, and it does carry over. In Trails of the Sky, in the first chapter, you begin Trails of the Sky 2 exactly where you left off Trails of the Sky 1, with the same levels, and you get really good items. You get really good items for completing every single side quest perfectly in the first chapter. So it's really
still
worthwhile.
On its way out, by the way.
Oh, the third chapter?
Yeah, they're still working on it.
Yeah, they're going to do it.
I believe them.
Yeah,
anyway, Trails of Cold Steel.
People flipped when they announced that. Because that was one of those things where, I know
No way
it's
in
2
hell,
out
man.
of 3. I know there's a third game, but people weren't sure they would actually go through with it. And they're like, no, we are. What?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the third one is also the least important. So it's more of a Gaiden kind of game. It's not really a third part of a trilogy. It's more of a side story at the end, but it is called the third chapter.
Fair enough.
Yep. All right, so that's all I got on Trails of Cold Steel. At some point, I'll beat it, and I'll talk some more about it. Otherwise, like my PS4 backlog, I'm almost like a budget Pyrojack, because my active games are Uncharted 4, Final Fantasy 15, and Bloodborne.
That's kind of
so
funny.
you could almost say that you fired Pyrojack and had me on so you could recall the good old days when Pyrojack was still.
Talk about Bloodborne again.
I'll pass. I've been spending most of my time playing Breath of the Wild on the Switch, and I'll try to be brief because I know Vyse wants to talk about this too. But I've been playing it in parallel with my wife and my sister-in-law, and I think it's fantastic. All of us play the game in a slightly different way, and we've all had slightly different experiences,
That's awesome.
which to some extent like makes us anxious when we watch each other play because we do like different things. Like I'm very easily distracted by everything in this open world. I'm aware of the fact that you can get these Korok seeds, and like every little thing that looks remarkable might be a Korok seed. So, like, I'll go off towards a tower or a shrine, and I'll just get distracted by something which is, like, 10 degrees to my left that looks like it might be a Korok seed. And, like, half an hour later, I'm 100 miles away from where I was trying to go, like, somewhere not even marked on the map right now. To give you a gist of my storyline progress, I have not completed the first major storyline quest, but I have, like, every tower except for, like, 2 or 3. And I found the Master Sword, but I can't get it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I know your pain.
Yeah, my wife has shared a story to me that she went to Death Mountain and she was able to get up the tower to unlock the map, but as soon as she paraglided off the tower, she immediately got set on fire because every wooden piece of equipment that she equipped like immediately spontaneously combusted. Not only every item that she was wearing, but also every item in her inventory. So
That's
yeah,
insane.
it can also happen where you get shocked by electricity if you get if you're wearing metal, like you will get struck by lightning.
Yes, if you're in a thunderstorm, and you can take advantage of this by throwing your weapon at an enemy.
Yep.
When you see the sparkles for thunder show up.
That's pretty clever.
They kind of stole this from Skyward Sword, like that. This mechanic started in Skyward Sword, where you had like metal shields that were bad against lightning but good against fire, and wooden shields that were vice versa, and they were both destructible. So you'd have to juggle your inventory, but like they really, really went all the way in Breath of the Wild. Like this game does not screw around.
Speaking
Lotus actually. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this might be what you were gonna say. But speaking of weaponizing unconventional things, the running gag in like every Zelda game where if you hit cuckoos too much, then they gang up on you.
Yes.
I saw like a gif of some large creature chasing Link, and it struck the cuckoos a couple times with its swings, and the cuckoos went after it. Like Link was untouched. There's just a swarm of cuckoos killing like a large enemy.
A moblin.
It's just like that's what it was. It was just like, oh my god, it's amazing.
So yeah, like the interplay between all the items is really interesting. The game is realistic in all the like convenient and like productive ways. I remember you guys complaining about, or at least Lotus complaining about, the idea of destructible weapons.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this while I was playing the game, and I realized that like to me there's no difference between the way this game handles destructible weapons and the way like first-person shooters handle ammunition.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Like, so that's how I would think about it. Like, I used to get really anxious when I thought about destructible weapons. It's like in the Zelda game, I'm used to wanting to have all my equipment available all the time, and my character upgrade should be available all the time. But it's just a different sort of game. Like, if you're playing an FPS and you pick up shotgun ammo, then you use the shotgun. It doesn't make your other weapons less useful. You just have to get more ammo for it later.
Okay.
Yep.
Lastly, my wife and I have been watching Steven Universe, which I love as a show. I'm a fan of Western animation. My last big show that I watched was Gravity Falls, and I would place this above that. So if you've heard good things about Gravity Falls, I'd put Steven Universe ahead of that. It's structured,
it gets better over time.
Yeah, it's structured in that same sort of less in a day structure that a lot of kids shows have. But what I like about it is that the characters, their flaws are part of their character instead of something that they develop for a single episode to drive the conflict for that episode.
Yeah, that's obnoxious.
So it makes the series feel more mature, and it allows you to take the characters more seriously because the problems they run into are because they're over their head and they need each other to get through things. It's like a very supportive series. It's a very different dynamic than you're used to from other like superhero shows. It's a good thing to watch. It actually makes a really good date night show if you and your significant other are into Western animation. I highly recommend it.
Great show.
So, yeah. So I spent plenty of time talking about wrestling, and that was more or less my week. So, Lotus Prince, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Okay, I guess I got a few things going on. I guess I played a little more Binding of Isaac. I don't really need to go into, I beat this challenge or that boss or whatever so much, but there is one thing I want to bring up. Almost as a word of warning. I'm trying to beat the Delirium boss with every character now because that's just about all I have left. I have a few extraneous achievements, Delirium and Ultra Greedier for almost everybody. So the way I fight Delirium, I find it's a lot easier if I do a regular run at my own pace and then take the negative photo at Mom and go into the dark room, because I mentioned this before, when you beat the dark room now, you get the option of having a victory lap, which allows you to do a new game plus. So when I actually try to fight Delirium by playing the game quickly enough to unlock the Hush fight, then I'm way more powered up than I would have been in a single run. So I was trying to do this with Eden, the Eden character, and I actually did. And there's one thing that I forgot about, which I had read before, but I forgot about it. I don't know if you've run into this, OldManStompy, but if you haven't, then take heed. If you do a victory lap, you had better quit the game during your next lap and then re-enter it. Because if you don't, then you won't get achievements. So I actually managed to kill Delirium with Eden, and I did not get rewarded for it. I was super mad.
Is that like a glitch? Or
I don't know. The wiki says it may be a glitch because you can get achievements if you quit and re-enter. So, yeah, the next time I beat the lamb, I started a new run. I wasn't sure if you're just allowed to quit the game or if you actually have to exit the program. I played it safe. I exited the program, re-entered. Beat Delirium, got credit that time, so just don't make the same mistake I did.
I thought you're not supposed to be able to get most achievements during a victory lap. Like, it's vaguely, what you're describing is sort of reminiscent of the bug that you used to be able to seed a run, where you take a previously generated run and put the seed in so you have the same experience as someone else. And if you quit out and then re-entered, then you could get achievements even though normally you couldn't on a seeded run.
I don't think I even knew about that one.
And so there was also, if I'm not mistaken, a bug where one of the achievements was switched, where you're supposed to be able to get it, without mods activated, but it was sort of like flip-flopped, where you had to have mods activated to get it.
You had to have mods activated.
The Binding of Isaac is not an expertly programmed game in certain ways.
Yeah. I mean, every other time I launch the program, there's like a downloadable update.
Mm-hmm. I was told that they were working on the patch for Afterbirth Plus, like all the way up to the last second before they released it. So
one thing I will say though is if you have unlocked the rerun option, normally on the main menu there's new game and continue if you're in the middle of a run. But if you've beaten a run, then you can do rerun, where you do the entire run over again. You do, like, you're reset. You start with nothing, but you know what all the items are going to be and everything. That, for sure, you cannot get achievements from. But victory laps seem to be allowed if you quit and re-enter. So, okay. So I was able to pull that off with Magdalene recently. That was kind of nice. And by the way, there's a certain challenge that one of the list challenges, I think it's April's Fool. If you beat that, then I believe Maggie starts with a pill, and it always seems to be a speed-up pill, which is quite useful for her because she's one of the slightly slower characters in the game. So that's kind of nice. So that's my Isaac update, I guess. Other two things I think were a little more engaging. I saw on my Facebook feed. I think it's because one of my Facebook friends had played the game or something, but their sponsored ad came up on my page. There's a game called Epistory, like Epic, like EPI story, typing Chronicles, and it's a typing game. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what it's like. And they have a demo on their main site. Like, the game's available on Steam. I don't know if Steam has the demo, but the regular website does. I gave it a shot. I found it was really engaging. I actually went ahead and bought the game and I beat it. The game's great. It's one of the best typing games I played, actually. I love playing stuff like Typing of the Dead because it's silly and stupid to be killing zombies with typewriters, but and keyboards and stuff. It's goofy and dumb, but it's like it's supposed to be. Epistory takes itself far more seriously. It's an isometric perspective game where you can move around freely. It's like it almost plays out like an RPG. Like you run around and just kind of look around the place, and if an enemy shows up, you can press spacebar to enter typing mode, where you can't move, but you type what's above the enemy to take it out. And to change things up, you can, you have your basic attack, but the moment you get a power-up, you will always use some sort of power-up attack. There's no enemy is like... there's not usually a case where you would want to choose this particular power-up over that one in terms of enemy weakness. Some enemies can only be killed with certain power-ups, so you have to swap to that particular element you have. There's fire, ice, electricity, and wind. But otherwise, if you're fighting anything the way you want to, then you might have reason to swap just for strategy. Because again, you cannot move when you're in typing mode. You can always leave typing mode to run away, but during the, quote, boss sections, you stand in this big circle and you cannot move. And everything's just rushing at you from all around, and you have to manage how you deal with them and in what order and with what elements. So, for example, lots of enemies, especially late game, have not one but several words you have to type. So if you have the fire power-up active, then when you type out a word over the enemy, the next word will slowly turn black and disappear and kind of kill itself for you. So if an enemy has 2 words you need to type, you only need to type 1, and then the other will burn it out. If it has 3 words, then the second word will burn out and you'll have to type the third, etc. For ice, it holds enemies in place for a little while. For electricity, if you hit an enemy with it, then the spark will probably jump and hit the next enemy and knock off one of its words without you having to type it. And finally, wind blows enemies backward, and I found that actually to be one of the best power-ups later, because you really get flooded with these things. And now, I didn't mention this before, but the game's aesthetic is freaking gorgeous. Everything in the game is made out of folded paper, including you. And as you walk across uncharted territory, you either hit reveal spots, or sometimes the territory unfolds itself for you. But you see, like, this really cool aesthetic of... this isn't even my words. I think this was a review on Steam. But the story literally unfolds before you, where, like, all these squares, like, from a grid pattern just open up, and stuff pops up in them like a storybook. And if you ever go to the edge of the map, and you look over the side, the edges really are, like, books with, like, loose paper and bookmarks sticking out of them. It's a really clever aesthetic. And there actually is a story to be had. And it gets surprisingly emotional at times for a freaking typing game. It's absolutely worth it. This is something I would actually consider let's playing in the future, because this is really, really worth a look. I highly recommend it. So, just as a reminder, Epistory, Typing Chronicles. You can look it up and buy it from the people's site themselves, and they have some merch associated with it, or via Steam, which comes with a digital soundtrack version if you want to opt for that as well. It's really, really damn good.
Now, I have, one question about this.
Mm-hmm.
How does it compare to Me VyseTheBold Teaches Typing?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I have much experience with Me VyseTheBold. I played a little Mario Teaches Typing, and that was very mediocre despite the Mario aesthetic. I don't know if I could speak for Me VyseTheBold, so sorry, no fun allowed. Yeah. That's my style. And so the last thing I want to bring up, I guess... oh, yeah, just for a second, I do want to mention, last time I think I mentioned I picked up Breath of the Wild for the Wii U just because I was afraid it would disappear. Same with Gravity Rush 2. I pulled another one of those. I picked up Nier Automata and Berserk Band of the Hawk for the PS4 because those are hard to find, on day one of release. I actually hit up a GameStop and I asked for both of those games, and the guy was like, yeah, we just happened to get those, but otherwise they're really not around. So I have a little security in that regard. It's just very disappointing that neither game comes with a proper instruction manual, so it's almost like, what's the point? I'm if I had more room on my system, I might as well have just gone digital. Like, one of the reasons I like physical copies of things is for their manuals. So it's like, well, oh well. The last thing I want to mention is I was playing a bunch more Yakuza 5. It took a really long time for me to get through all the side stuff to go to the actual story, but I finally cleared Kiryu section of the game. There's an entire, almost subplot that you don't have to do with taxi driving missions, because you're a taxi driver in this game, and there are a couple kinds of missions. Well, there's 3. There's like straight up racing, because you have to go against these punk street racers with your taxi, which you actually soup up as you go, and you can get some music from Yakuza, some from Yakuza songs, but also there's like a track from Daytona, there's a track from Outrun if you want to buy it. It's like, yes. But also there are conversation missions where you don't actually drive, you just try to have the best kind of dialogue with the customer who's talking to you in the back. And finally, there are the actual taxi driving missions where you have to take them to a destination, and man, you have to follow the rules. Like, you have to come to a complete stop at a stop sign. You have to stop at a red light. If you're turning, you got to use your turn signal. You cannot suddenly accelerate or suddenly brake, because that'll jostle the customer. It's like, you really have to concentrate on being a proper driver. It's pretty disorienting for a video game. Otherwise, getting through the story took a while, but the way Kiryu's segment concludes is, like, this is basically the reason I wanted to bring it up on the cast. It's just so much fun. Because what's happening is you are in an entirely new town, and there's a particular, Yakuza family that sort of runs the place, but it's very small time. And your old Yakuza group, the Tojo clan, kind of wants to get in on its territory, because, like, your friend's Daigo, who runs the Tojo clan, he's gone missing. That's the basic premise of the game. So this just asshole who's holding the fort down is just trying to strong-arm this smaller family. So the Tojo family really should run it into the ground. So you actually kind of have to go up against, Tojo associates, which you have done before in Yakuza 2. 5 really seems to be taking a page from 2, in that, number 1, there are some assholes in Tojo you have to deal with, and number 2, there's a guy from the Omi Alliance who's an incredibly badass fighter who highly respects you, just like, the final boss of 2. So there's a guy like that in 5. I don't know where he's going to play into the plot, but he looks like a lot of fun. Like, he's very polite and respectful, but, like, he hasn't really thrown his weight around yet, but he looks strong. Like, I kind of don't want to fight him. But there's this amazing part in the game where it's kind of how part 1, like, Kiryu's segment concludes, where you actually side with the clan to defend against the assholes in Tojo. You side with the clan who runs the place in the town you're in, and so you get them to call the Tojo clan out to have, like, a war. And it's done like Gangs of New York style, where everybody shows up, so you have 2 giant groups facing each other down, and then each leader says something, everyone gets psyched up, and then you just have 2 big teams run at each other. But here's the thing, you don't want either side to win, because if they do, then it'll turn the town into a hotspot for a turf war and just shake everything up. So you kind of want to beat the Tojo clan out and have the other family maintain control. So what's amazing is you're ex-Yakuza as of, like, 2, I think. Like, you haven't officially been in the game for a while, even though you still have connections. So you just, like, both teams are staring each other down, and you just drive up between them in your taxi. And the local family knew that you would be there. The Tojo guys had no idea. And they're like, oh my god, are you here to help us? And you're like, no, actually. And then you like, ask the guy who's running them, like, basically the most badass question you can. Because keep in mind, each side has, like, 70 to 100 guys staring the other down, most unarmed. Some have weapons like short swords and, like, baseball bats and golf clubs. And so you just ask the head of the Tojos, like, I have a question. I don't want this to turn into a turf war if Yakuza fights Yakuza, so I'm a civilian. Here's my question. If I beat the shit out of every last one of you by myself, will it not count as a turf war? And they're like, what? Like, it's amazing. And they're like, you're out of your goddamn mind. And you're like, you didn't answer my question. It's like, oh. So the guy who's running a lieutenant in the Omi Alliance is like, this sounds amazing. I accept your conditions. I want to see this. So it's basically the 70-man fight from Shenmue, only way more fast-paced and with way more guys on screen, and you just
That's awesome.
freaking destroy everybody. And like in an actual fight, it's not a cutscene, except for like the very end. But there's one part that cracks me up, because Yakuza is mostly a very serious game, but it has no problem with its ridiculous, silly moments reminding you that it's a video game. And there's one part that's so goddamn stupid, but like in all the right ways. Like after you've been fighting guys for way too long, 3 big guys come out. One of them has this giant like sledgehammer, and the other 2 completely inexplicably have shoulder-mounted rocket launchers just for the cutscene.
What?
They also have hammers when you fight them for real, but in the cutscene they have rocket launchers, and they both immediately open fire. And this happened so quickly I didn't see them at first. I just thought rockets came from nowhere. I'm like, what? And it's so funny because these 2 rockets come sort of on either side of Kiryu, and it's one of those cases where he sees them coming because, they move slower than bullets, and he just very slowly, without changing expression, sort of pivots his body at the side, so either rocket flies on either side of him and just hits some cars behind him that go flying in the air. He doesn't look. He just keeps staring the guys down and walking toward them. It's so freaking dumb, but it's badass at the same time. It's great.
That's awesome.
The fight's pretty fun, but like the cutscenes before and after, and like that stupid shenanigan, like it was great. So now that Kiryu segment is over, I don't really have much else to say about where I am now regarding plot. I'm just playing as the next guy, Saejima, who was actually guy number 2 you play as in Yakuza 4. He's an ex-convict, and oh man, Kiryu's plot strong in terms of like he's a better fighter than anybody, but Saejima is more like he can lift, and his punches will actually send guys like across the room. Like he has charge attacks. Kiryu has like 1 charge attack, but Saejima, his combos lead into charge attacks, and he could do things like an overhead punch that literally bounces the guy off of ground, and he does heat actions where like you can grab a guy out of the air after he's bounced and just like punch him in the freaking spine. Saejima's like, I've been lately putting up a lot of clips on YouTube of just really nasty looking heat actions that Kiryu can pull off, because some of them are really like, you actually say like, ooh, out loud when you watch them. I gotta start doing Saejima. His actions are freaking terrible. Like he has a move where he like slams a guy horizontally against the wall and then just kicks him in with his foot and just like bends him backward. Like it just looks horrible. Saejima's moves are a lot slower than Kiryu's, but they freaking hurt. Like almost anything he does will knock a guy down. It's ridiculous. He even has a heat move that's done specifically for guys who are guarding, where he just axe kicks like through their hands and just pushes them to the ground. He's basically like the brute of the game, and it's amazing. I haven't played as him in a long time, and I wasn't much of a fan of him at first in Yakuza 4 because I played him right after the super agile guy, but he's one of those cases where I missed him without even knowing it. Like, I played him again, I'm like, yeah. And it also helps that I'm playing him in Kamurocho, the main town of every Yakuza game up to this point. So I'm out of Kiryu's town and I'm in Kamurocho, and I'm like, we're back, baby. Like, it's a lot of fun. So I very much look forward to seeing where the game takes me. So that's basically my video game week. How about you, Vyse?
Well, so I've been distracted completely by Zelda. I haven't been this glued to a game since Doom last year. This game has distracted me pretty much from all other gaming. I don't have time for anything else, and neither do I want to play anything else. Like it's one of those deals where it's a game that is so good and so much fun that you don't want to stop playing it. When I come home, I want to play it. When I'm there are whole days that I wish I had to play this game. There's just so much to do and so much fun in it, and it's better than almost any other open world game that I've ever played, because of what they did in order to make the entire world interesting. Like all the side characters and NPCs in the world have personalities. They did a really good job at bringing that Nintendo charm, but blowing it up on such a bigger scale than they've ever been used to doing so. And they combined so many good games. I've said before that it feels like Assassin's Creed or Far Cry when it comes to the towers and unlocking like parts of the map and things like that. And it feels like Skyrim, with the item collecting and the openness. But I feel like something like Skyrim is almost boring in comparison because, there's lots of land to travel and things like that, but there's not nearly the amount of things to do. There's like a big problem with open world games is that you have these big open worlds and they're constructed well. They may be realistic. Like one big one that I always point to and some people may even point to No More Heroes for this, but I think actually the biggest culprit is LA Noire. There's absolutely nothing to do in that world. There's no reason. There's no reason why that game is an open world game. There's no reason.
They wanted to recreate all of LA, but the problem was...
Which is cool, but it's not a good game.
Well, that's the thing. The problem was that I think the crimes that were committed, at least in homicide, were done in the actual locations where they happened in LA. So, yeah, like 70% of the game's map is just like filler.
Yeah, and that's a big shame because you're wasting all of that real estate. I mean, when you have something like a Grand Theft Auto or even Saints Row after it, where you're in a cartoon world where you could be goofy and violent. At least you have that. At any moment, you could just be goofy and violent and do outrageous things. But when you're a realistic 1930s, was it 1930s or 1940s?
40s.
1940s cop, where you have to adhere to the law and you can't be goofy at all. You're not a cartoon character at all.
Oh, I was perfectly. It doesn't make much sense. No, I was perfectly happy with that. A lot of people weren't because they were used to playing Grand Theft Auto. I was totally content. My problem was that just most of the game doesn't exist. You're only within that little centralized area.
Well, that's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
That's what I mean. Like you, there's not a replacement for that goofy behavior.
Yeah.
It's not that I have a problem with the conceit of the game. It's more like it needs to come up with something to do.
They kind of did, but it wasn't really anything.
What, the minor crimes on the side, like the misdemeanors and things like that?
No, I did those, and those still weren't spread out, which I was shocked by. But no, there's stuff like... I was checking the achievements, and it's like, one of the achievements is like, find all of the film reels. And I'm like, I didn't even know those were in the game. I've never seen one. Like, you would have to be exploring the map for no good reason to find any of that.
So getting back to my original point, Zelda, along with OldManStompy's assertion that there's always a Korok seed to look for. There's always a puzzle to be solved. There's always a shrine nearby. There's always items you could be collecting. There's items that you could be collecting for elixirs or for food or for side missions and things like that. You can just have an entire day where you go around and you mine and try to get materials for mining. I mean, it's just fun to do everything in that game. It's never not fun. Except... Well, go ahead.
No, there's a compendium that you can fill in of like every like plant and animal
and
weapon that exists in the world,
it's
and
Metroid
it uses
Prime
the pictures
scanning.
that you. Yeah, no, it's better than the Metroid Prime scanning because it uses the pictures that you take.
Oh, that's
so
great.
The compendium itself is really dynamic. I remember
you make
like
the compendium.
I remember getting blown up and like getting knocked down the snowy mountain and like being really pissed off because I was gonna have to climb all the way back up. But then I saw like these snow doves fly away, and I was just like, I'm never gonna see those snow doves again. I'll never get a picture for my compendium. This is so sad.
What's also cool about it is that if you have them in your compendium, you can actually track them via radar and try to get close to them again. So anything that you put in your compendium, you can actually find the nearest one. If you're near one, you can find your way to it.
That's fantastic.
So not only does it work for shrines, which is the biggest help, it works for common items. So like, let's say if you want to be able to find like a certain type of dragonfly, you can say, okay, alert me when there's one of these nearby. And it'll point you in the direction too. So it's really, really cool. And even just doing the side quests, even though even the minor ones, is still a lot of fun. Super charming, full of lovable weirdos, which the game has doubled down on. I mean, like, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is that how weird the NPCs in Zelda have gotten over time.
That little girl who collects bugs in Twilight Princess.
Especially her. I'm actually thinking of her specifically when I'm thinking of Twilight Princess. So
she got creepy with like when you give her a bug and she's like, "Oh my god, I could just like hug you and caress your little like 6 legs." I'm like, "Dude, stop!"
So, Agatha is so popular that she became a playable character in Hyrule Warriors.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So, like, you have this cast of weird people that make up Hyrule, like, and that kind of really, it kind of was hinted at with Link to the Past. You had, like, a couple weird characters. In particular, you had, the guy who was trying to run away from you constantly. You have, like, little inklings of just weird people.
Those gigantic smiles. Lumberjack guys, they're just like the like goofy face.
Yeah, but and when in 1 and 2 they were just like normal, just normal people.
Yeah, they're just like old man in cave, old woman in cave.
Even in the second one, they didn't really have much personality.
The weirdest they got was I Am Bug and I Am Error. It's like, their names, hey.
But in Link's Awakening, there were actually a lot of weird characters in that game, and they have really gotten exponentially weirder. So Ocarina of Time has plenty of weird characters. Like, everybody in Kakariko Village is unique and weird.
Yeah.
And then even more so in Majora's Mask, everybody's weird.
Everyone was an analog of everyone else, and it's like, what are they going to be like this time?
And not only that, but they're the star of the game. Like the quest in that game is actually to help people, not to go and do the dungeons per se. It's more to help everyone.
And one thing I thought was really clever actually was Malon, young version and old version, just became younger and older sister in Majora's Mask.
Oh yeah,
I was like, I see what you did there.
So Majora's Mask has some really creative use of the same characters, or like Funhouse mirror versions of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Twilight Princess, of course, that has reincarnation. Wind Waker has reincarnations of quite a few of the characters from those games. Like you have Tingle and they have their own characters. Like you have the introduction of Beetle is in that game. And then Beetle shows up a whole bunch of times after that. He shows up in, or different incarnations of Beetle show up in Skyward Sword, and now also in Breath of the Wild. So not only do you have all of these returning reincarnated characters, which I think maybe I kind of hope that Nintendo eventually weighs in on how everybody keeps on getting reincarnated, because it's not just Link and Zelda. It's multiple people in Hyrule keep getting reincarnated. It's not just the main characters. When you think about it, you think, maybe it's weird that just like these same 2 people keep showing up, but it's actually tons of people keep showing up in Hyrule over and over and over again. And I just love it. I mean, Skyward Sword had some really great NPC movements. In fact, I think that's the best part of that game. and it's a shame that it got overlooked by its dungeon structure and its gameplay structure. It's a real shame because there's some really good side quest moments in that game that are really, really fun, and you get to really enjoy the characters in those games. But Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild just does it better than any game in the series, and it's just so much fun. And one thing I noticed is that the shrines have the same aha moments as Portal puzzles do, and so like Nintendo even took a page out of Valve's book when they made this game. They looked at every popular game in the last 10 years and they combined it into one, and then made it distinctly Zelda's 2 on top of it. I think it's an amazing achievement in gaming, and I can't wait to keep playing it. But I have the Master Sword now, and it took me forever to get it. And there's still tons to do. I uncovered the entire map, and there's still... I have 2 more dungeons to go out of the main 4. But it should be... If I wanted to go do them, I could at this point. And I just haven't, because I'm off doing other things. Like, it's just so much fun to like interact with the world. So, having said that, I did want to quick say that I did order... I haven't bought many games lately. I bought Nier Automata and Horizon Zero Dawn just because I knew I would want to play them eventually, and I kind of wanted to support them, especially Nier, because not only is a platinum game, I buy every platinum game, but Nier is one of my favorite games of last generation. So, and apparently everybody loves the new one. They like it a lot. So can't wait to play that, but I'm still not going to stop until I'm done Zelda. But I bought Binding of Isaac. I already have it for PC. I already have it for PC, but I was really enthralled by the physical edition of this game. It is made out to be just kind of like the dungeon overview is meant to be a reference to Zelda. Yeah. The instruction manual and reversible cover and everything are really, really cool with this game, and I can't wait to even just hold it and read it. And it has an instruction manual, which none of the other Switch games do, to my knowledge. Yeah,
that's a game. Despite my lack of a Switch, I really might pick up Isaac for the Switch. Like, there's no way I'm gonna play that version because I put all my time into the PC one. But like, just for the sake of seeing what that manual's like.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of it. It's actually like the original Legend of Zelda manual. It's a better Zelda. It's a better Zelda manual than the actual Breath of the Wild game came with.
Yep.
That's amazing.
And I can't wait to play it on the system too, because I think it'll be a great portable game. I mean, the couple versions ago that was on Vita was really good, and also the 3DS version was kind of crummy, but I think this game will really shine on a system that can handle it. So
the Vita couldn't quite handle it, and that was the reason why they didn't put the 2 expansions on the Vita. It just wasn't quite powerful enough for them to fit all the possible combinations of items.
Yeah, there are some stupid combinations you can get in that game.
This is the perfect it's the perfect platform for it. I think the Switch is really great because it points out how good of a platform it is for certain things. And one of them being, it is the perfect system to play somebody else in Tetris in. Like, just think about that. Like, you could just put it in kickstand mode and play another person in Tetris, like, immediately. And you could play another person in Bomberman immediately, no matter where you are. You know, if you just have it on you, you can play 2-player Bomberman or 2-player Tetris. So, I think this version of Binding of Isaac is going to be a lot of fun for me to play specifically. I know you're not a heck of a lot into, portable versions of games, Lotus, but I think for me, this game will be a lot of fun just to play on the couch, while watching TV with my roommate, that kind of thing.
No, I get it. Although, actually, there was one thing I was going to point out before we started recording, but you rightfully let me know, like, may as well do it on recording. There actually is a physical PC version of Isaac. But I mean, like, of course, I think it just comes with the Steam code. But like, it's a box and like a little art book and everything. The guy who makes Isaac, Edmund, has his own store. I think it's available like intermittently though. Not even products, but like the store itself. Like it's just like, oh, I'm taking the week off or 2 weeks or whatever. Like it just, you have to check his Twitter to see when it'll be back. But if you Google, because I don't remember what the site is, but if you Google Binding of Isaac store, it'll come right up. But you can actually order a physical copy of the game. But he's got a bunch of other cool stuff. He has sort of like figures of some of the bosses, like Gemini or Husk. He has posters. I actually, in addition to the PC release, I also picked up like an actual set of tarot cards, because Isaac,
awesome.
Yeah, Isaac pushes the tarot cards really hard, and he actually has tarot cards with all sorts of cool designs on them. So like, I'm not one of those people who knows how to read tarot or anything, although the concept does interest me, but I freaking love tarot cards and their designs. They're just cool. Like, if I were able to get any tarot cards, Isaac, which I do have now, is way up there. I would also love to get my hands on the Japanese-only, like a Baroque tarot cards from, like, you remember that game from like the Wii and the PS2? The PS2 had a special edition in Japan that came with tarot cards, and now it's like good luck finding those. But I've seen some of the designs and they're freaking cool.
Nice.
So the conclusion is that we can now have an entire podcast episode about Binding of Isaac.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be definitely.
Yeah, Vyse talks about the Switch version, and OldManStompy and I talk about just what we've been talking about.
So, having said all that, I did want to move on to my weigh-in. I actually lost a pound this week.
Hey.
So I'm down to my lowest at 221. Like I've been saying, the whole reason for me weighing in has been to keep reminding myself to keep at it. You may not think I've made a lot of progress, but I have. It's one of those things that has been a struggle for me my entire life, my weight. So it's a huge thing for me to keep moving on. So I'm going to continue with it, and hopefully I'll get very close to getting under 220, which has been a long time coming. Now, I think we should do one question before we sign off here.
Yep. This is one I actually wanted to save specifically for OldManStompy, just to get his viewpoint on it. This is from Dracologist. He'd actually had this question earlier in the bunch we'd asked, I think, 2 podcasts ago, but this one I wanted to hold off on. What are our thoughts on the prospects of a white hole? The concept of something like the opposite of a black hole, where it spews matter out of a single point of existence. Personally, I think space is weird and crazy, so who knows, maybe they exist, but right now I'm going to say I don't personally have a reason to.
Wouldn't that just be the Big Bang?
Yeah, so I can't talk too much about the theoretical groundings behind a white hole, despite being a physicist. I was more on the experimental side of things. In fact, my thesis was proving that the Large Hadron Collider would not produce black holes. What Vyse is saying is somewhat accurate. Like, if you want to conceive of a white hole and how it would exist, if it's an object that only ejects matter, like, how would the matter get in there in the first place?
And where did it come from?
The theories that propose white holes propose them as the opposite of black holes. That, like, if you produce a black hole in the future, then it must produce by symmetry, it must possibly produce a white hole in the past. But that isn't necessarily something that you can, make predictions about, because we can't make observations about the distant past. We can only make observations about the current time, and it sort of warps the standard model of physics to think about it in that way. One reasonable theory would be that, for example, within the event horizon of a black hole, a white hole is produced, and perhaps even an entire universe is generated in a Big Bang-like event in a white hole, like inside a black hole, which means that we, in our universe, might be inside another black hole in a macroscopic universe right now, and we would never know.
Wow.
Because by definition, information can't enter a black hole, so the outside universe would never be able to contact us.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So those
Really
are my thoughts.
Nice.
Well, so we also had to explore the concept of opposites, right?
Oh, was there a framing question for for this white hole question that I missed out on?
No, I read the question like straight up. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
No, so a lot of interesting topics in physics, like white holes, come up when you start to explore the concepts of broken symmetries. And this is what comes up when you sort of relax the idea of symmetry around a black hole. You get the idea that if a black hole can exist, what about a white hole? So in the laboratory frame of reference, if you don't really care about an absolute concept, you can make something like a white hole. So do you know how diffraction works?
No.
So diffraction is like what you get from a prism. It's what happens. So the speed of light in a vacuum is constant, but the speed of light is not constant inside a medium, which is how you get diffraction. For example, when you shine a light through a prism, the way it travels at different speeds throughout facets of the prism, and it creates a rainbow because the light is split into its different wavelengths by this process. This also creates reflection. If light enters a surface and refracts, it's possible for it to be reflected off the inner surface of an object. So that's how you get reflections in a mirror, because light moves so slowly through the medium behind the mirror, the silver coating behind it, that it reflects back out again. So you can create a white hole in the laboratory frame by creating a material with an index of diffraction so high that light can't penetrate it.
That's interesting, because with a black hole, like, nothing, including light, can escape it. So it's like the polar opposite. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you can use this as sort of a tool to try to understand what happens at the event horizon of a black hole, because it's almost like you're inside the black hole.
Wow. Really interesting.
Yeah.
In certain theoretical aspects. I didn't quite get it perfect. I didn't really proofread my response. I'm sure I used the wrong terms a couple of times. I'm technically not a physicist anymore, so I claim no responsibility for my actions.
Technically not a physicist. The best kind of not a physicist.
I'm sure you gave a better answer than just pretty much about anybody that would ever
off the cuff
give us. So that's a one that most people can understand. So I thank you for that.
Okay.
Now, and that's really the show for this week. We want to thank our fan who contributed a question there, and please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own on the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs up, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. Helps us promote and spread the awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement keeps the show going. You can also catch us on Thursdays on our sister podcast, Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as VyseTheBold at VyseTheBold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, and Twitter. Also, I've had a cold this entire time, in case you've been wondering.
Yeah. You're going to be the next one fired. I sense it.
And go ahead with some plugs, guys.
Sure. Well, you can follow me on YouTube. My channel is called Lotus Prince, and you can friend me and communicate with me on Twitter at Lotus Prince, all one word, LOTUSPRINCE.
And you can find me on pretty much every form of social media as OldManStompy, OldManStompy. And while I'm not a full-time member of the podcast, I'll probably be putting blog posts up on the main site as soon as this week. So please feel free to give feedback, and I hope you find it interesting.
All right, and thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back on Thursday with Reactive Consciousness.
Until next time, everyone.
Cheers.